William Fitzgibbon is a reporter at the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. That's the organization behind the release of the Panama Papers. He joins me now live from Chicago. Thanks so much for joining us. First, tell us what it's meant for you as an investigative journalist to analyze these thousands of documents. How much do they really reveal? How much damage could they do? And how much could they actually change?
Well, I think what Panama Papers has meant for me and nearly 400 other journalists who've worked on this project for many months, even up to a year, has been a lot of time banging our heads against some very complex and some very secretive corporate documents. And to me, that's what Panama Papers is about, and that's what many advocates and governments are hoping will change as a result of Panama Papers. It's putting an end to the secrecy and the anonymity that has allowed not only people to avoid tax, as you point out, but in many cases people to commit crimes and to really inflict harm on people in every corner of the world.
Now, as for the contents you've just been able to analyze, what did you find most shocking?
I think what I found most shocking were two things. One, first of all, how blatant and explicit many people were when they contacted Mossack Fonseca and said, "I want to avoid taxes, please help me." What also shocked me was the number of politicians and people who have been accused of very serious acts. We're talking about passports of prime ministers and heads of state and people related to governments across the Middle East, for example, where there are ongoing wars. And you ask yourself, why on earth are these people being allowed to set up companies under the veil of anonymity?
They've also revealed more information in this round about Iceland's former prime minister, who is probably the highest profile victim, if we can call it that, of this leak. Does it make now even more sense that he resigned so quickly when the first leaks were revealed?
I think the quickness with which the Prime Minister resigned in Iceland only a few days after the launch of Panama Papers just reveals and is a good indication of how frustrated many people are across the world, including in Iceland, which of course famously went through its own economic crisis a few years ago. So the quickness of his resignation, and I think a number of other perhaps more minor resignations we've seen from officials across the globe in South America, Eastern Europe, and even pressure on people across Asia, has been really reflective of the global growing movement of anger and frustration, which many people hope will lead to a reform of this system.
What do you think we might learn about Russia's President Vladimir Putin and his suspected link to money laundering?
I think that remains to be seen. Obviously, investigative journalists have looked through Panama Papers and reported on stories that we now all know about reported family friends of his. I think now with the open database, what that will enable is other journalists and public citizens who perhaps have tidbits of information to do their own research and perhaps to put two and two together so that if anything else worthy of public interest attention comes to light, it may be exposed. But there's certainly a lot more work to do. And what we've seen so far, even though it's led to reforms, resignations, and potential prosecutions, is just the tip of the iceberg.
Okay, Mr. Fitzgibbons, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us with that.